Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. This is Colin Birkland, Assistant Captain on the Central Zone Rapid River District Office. And I'm going to be talking a bit about the 10 and 18. We hear 10 and 18 a lot, but it refers to the 10 standard fire orders and the 18 watchout situations. And the 10 and 18 came from a task force leader that was trying to make things safer for people, fewer injuries, fewer fatalities, and they were developed in 1957. So the 10 orders we live by, they're set in stone for us. So those are things that we don't bend or break. And then the watchout situations, they're kind of described as they're a little more specific and cautionary than the actual orders. But if you're ever on a fire, prescribed burn, any of the settings in wildland fire, and you get the feeling that something isn't working right, something isn't going right, you have that feeling in your stomach, make sure that you're reviewing these 10 and 18s. If you're noticing that you're breaking some of the watchout situations, maybe it's time to stop and talk about things. And even at a low level, a brand new firefighter, just remember that you have a voice, and if you're seeing some of these watchout situations, you need to speak up and communicate it through the proper chain of command. So the 10 standard firefighting orders are laid out kind of chronologically. The first 3 are fire behavior specific, and the next 3 are fire line safety, followed by organizational control, and finally the last one, if your first 1 through 9 are considered and in place, fight fire aggressively, having provided for safety first. So the first video is the 10 orders, and that's a little over 4 minutes long. So it's time to go through those. And Mike, did you say people are going to do this on their own through the chat bar, the message?
Yes.
So
Looks like it's in the chat.
Let's just watch both of them in a row, and then we'll talk about them after.
Okay, about 10 minutes?
Yep, 10 minutes. We'll get back together and discuss the 10 and 18.
The 10 standard firefighting orders were first developed in 1957 by a task force studying the common factors in fatality fires over the previous 2 decades. The intent was for the orders to be committed to memory and implemented by all personnel involved in fire control operations. Each fire order directly addresses a common hazard that has repeatedly proven to kill firefighters if overlooked or improperly mitigated. Realistically, we can never eliminate all risk, but if every firefighter knows the 10 standard firefighting orders and implements them, we've come a long way to reducing the risk of injury or death. After a few more years of study and examination of fatality fires, the 18 watchout situations were developed in order to expand on and complement the 10 standard firefighting orders. The 18 watchout situations identify specific conditions that, when overlooked or improperly mitigated, have been historically proven to kill firefighters. The 18 watchout situations aren't something you technically violate, they simply can and do occur in the fire environment. When one or more watchout situations are present, you must recognize them and take action, often by reassessing and implementing the 10 standard firefighting orders.
All right, so some of us might be finishing up the videos, but again, know where you can find this information. The best place, IRPG back cover. I've seen stickers, people have them on their water bottles, and of course electronic is always an option. You can download the 10 and 18, you can download the IRPG to your phone or your device. But again, stressing the importance of these 10 and 18. You need to follow the 10 and keep an eye on the 18. Watch out situations, and again, speak up if something's being broken or you're not comfortable. So after the 2 videos, there is another activity, immersive action activity, and it is a virtual scenario type setup. We're not going to go through it right now, but the link is here for people to go ahead and do that on their own time. And I'm just going to kind of give a little rundown of how it works. There are like 6 or 7 different scenarios that you can click on and go through. Just pay attention to the briefing, write down notes on the virtual briefing, and then once you're actually in the scenario, the virtual scenario, there will be a toolbar at the bottom, and when there's one that has like an eye icon, there's one that has a question mark icon. When those flash, click on them and it'll help you through the scenario. I think they're pretty cool. It was fun going through them. And that's about all I have for the 10 and 18, unless there are questions or comments.
I just had a quick question, Colin, about some of the functionality there. There's actually is there a 360 view in there?
Yes, there's a 360 view, and when your cursor turns into a hand, like a pan type option, you can pan around 360. You can look up, down, around. So make sure you're doing that in the virtual scenarios, because it'll give you a few tips on what to expect, whether it's like a thunderhead building or a spot fire or something like that. Watch out situations. And then you can ask questions. And that part was a little bit complicated. For me, it took me a couple of tries to get through the scenarios and figure out how everything works. But when the question mark flashes, click on it, and then you can ask the questions. And it's missing information from the briefing typically, or some kind of missing information that'll help you out in the scenario later on.
Sounds fun. Thank you, Colin.
You're welcome.
And I'm not viewing the chat box. Do we have any questions that have come up in the chat at all?
We do not.
All right. We are going to move on to our next presentation.